An American Idyll, The Life of Carleton H. Parker, by Cornelia Stratton Parker. Section 0, Preface. It was a year ago today that Carl Parker died, March 17, 1918. His 40th birthday would have come on March 31st. His friends, his students, were free to pay their tribute to him, both in the press and in letters which I treasure. I alone of all, I who knew him best and loved him most, had no way to give some outlet to my soul, could see no chance to pay my tribute. One and another have written of what was and will be his valuable service to economic thought and progress, of the effects of his mediation of labor disputes in the Northwest and throughout the nation, and of his inestimable qualities as friend, comrade, and teacher. He gave us as federal mediator, so runs one estimate of him, quote, all his unparalleled knowledge and understanding of labor and its point of view. That knowledge, that understanding he gained not by academic investigation, but by working in mines and woods, in shops and on farms. He had the trust and confidence of both sides in disputes between labor and capital. His services were called in whenever trouble was brewing. Thanks to him, strikes were averted, war work of the most vital importance, threatened by misunderstandings and smoldering discontent, went on. End quote. But almost everyone who has written for publication has told of but one side of him, and there were such countless sides. Would it then be out of place if I, his wife, could write of all of him, even to the manner of husband he was? I have hesitated for some months to do this. He had not yet made so truly national a name, perhaps, as to warrant any assumption that such a work would be acceptable. Many of his close friends have asked me to do just this, however, for they realize, as I do so strongly, that his life was so big, so full, so potential, that even as the story of a man, it would be worth the reading. And at the risk of sharing intimacies that should be kept in one's heart only, I long to have the world know something of the life we led together. An old friend wrote, quote, Dear splendid Carl, the very embodiment of life, energized and joyful to a degree I have never known. And the thought of the separation of you two makes me turn cold. The world can never be the same to me with Carl out of it. I loved his high spirit, his helpfulness, his humor, his adoration of you. Knowing you and Carl and seeing your life together has been one of the most perfect things in my life. End quote. An Eastern professor who had visited at our home from time to time wrote, quote, You have lost one of the finest husbands I have ever known. Ever since I have known the Parker family, I have considered their home life as ideal. I had hoped that the too few hours I spent in your home might be multiplied many times in coming years. I have never known a man more in love with a woman than Carl was with you. End quote. So I write of him for these reasons, because I must, to ease my own pent-up feelings, because his life was so well worth writing about, because so many friends have sent word to me. Someday, when you have the time, I hope you will sit down and write me about Carl. The newer friend asking especially about his earlier years, the older friends wishing to know his later interests, and especially of the last months, and of, what I have written to no one as yet, his death. I can answer them all this way. And lastly, there is the most intimate reason of all. I want our children to know about their father, not just his academic worth, his public career, but the life he led from day to day. If I live till they are old enough to understand, I of course can tell them. If not, how are they to know? And so, in the last instance, this is a document for them. Chapter 1. Such hosts of memories come tumbling in on me. More than 15 years ago, on September 3, 1903, I met Carl Parker. He had just returned to college, 2 weeks late for the beginning of his senior year. There was much concern among his friends, for he had gone on a 2-month hunting trip in the wilds of Idaho, and had planned to return in time for college. I met him his first afternoon in Berkeley. He was on the top of a steep ladder, helping put up an awning for our sorority dance that evening, uttering his proverbial joyous banter to anyone who came along, be it the man with the cakes, the sedate house mother, fellow awning hangers, or the girls busying about. Thus he was introduced to me, a freshman of 2 weeks. He called down gaily, "How do you do, young lady?" Within a week we were fast friends, I looking up to him as a freshman would to a senior, and a senior 7 years older than herself at that. Within a month I remember deciding that if I ever became engaged, I would tell Carl Parker before I told anyone else on earth. After about 2 months, he called one evening with his pictures of Idaho. Such a treat as my mountain-loving soul did have. I still have the map he drew that evening with the trails and camping places marked, and I said, innocence itself, "I'm going to Idaho on my honeymoon." And he said, "I'm not going to marry till I find a girl who wants to go to Idaho on her honeymoon." Then we both laughed. But the deciding event in his eyes was when we planned our first long walk in the Berkeley Hills for a certain Saturday, November 22nd, and that morning it rained. One of the tenets I was brought up on by my father was that bad weather was never an excuse for postponing anything. So I took it for granted that we would start our walk as planned. Carl telephoned anon and said, "Of course the walk is off." "But why?" I asked. "The rain," he answered. "As if that makes any difference." At which he gasped a little and said, all right, he'd be around in a minute, which he was, in his Idaho outfit, the lunch he had suggested being entirely responsible for bulging one pocket. Off we started in the rain, and such a day as we had. We climbed Grizzly Peak, only we did not know it for the fog and rain, and just over the summit, in the shelter of a very drippy oak tree, we sat down for lunch. A fairly sanctified expression came over Carl's face as he drew forth a rather damp and frayed-looking paper bag, as a king might look who uncovered the chest of his most precious court jewels before a courtier deemed worthy of that honor. And before my puzzled and somewhat doubtful eyes, he spread his treasure, jerked bear meat. Nothing but jerked bear meat. I never had seen jerked anything, let alone tasted it. I was used to the conventional picnic sandwiches done up in wax paper, plus a stuffed egg, fruit, and cake. I was ready for a lunch after the conservative pattern, and here I gazed upon a mess of most unappetizing-looking, wrinkled, shrunken, jerked bear meat, the rain dropping down on it from the oak tree. I would have gasped if I had not caught the look of awe and reverence on Carl's face as he gazed eagerly, and with what respect, on his offering. I merely took a hunk of what was supplied, set my teeth into it, and pulled. It was salty, very. It looked queer, tasted queer, was queer. Yet that lunch. We walked farther, sat now and then under other drippy trees, and at last decided that we must slide home, by that time soaked to the skin, and I minus the heel to one shoe. I had just got myself out of the bath and into dry clothes when the telephone rang. It was Carl. Could he come over to the house and spend the rest of the afternoon? It was then about 4:30. He came, and from then on things were decidedly different. How I should love to go into the details of that freshman year of mine. I am happier right now writing about it than I have been in 6 months. I shall not go into detail, only to say that the night of the junior prom of my freshman year, Carl Parker asked me to marry him, and 2 days later, up again in our hills, I said that I would. To think of that now, to think of waiting 2 whole days to decide whether I would marry Carl Parker or not. And for 14 years from the day I met him, there was never one small moment of misunderstanding, one day that was not happiness, except when we were parted. Perhaps there are people who would consider it stupid, boresome, to live in such peace as that. All I can answer is that it was not stupid, it was not boresome. Oh, how far from it. In fact, in those early days, we took our vow that one thing we would never do was let the world get commonplace to us, that the time should never come when we would not be eager for the start of each new day. The Kipling poem we loved the most, for it was the spirit of both of us, was The Long Trail. You know the last of it. The Lord knows what we may find, dear lass, and the deuce knows what we may do. But we're back once more on the old trail, our own trail, the out trail, We're down, hull down on the long trail, the trail that is always new. End of chapter 1.